So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good night. Actually, I didn't, but but I have enough adrenaline now, so I will do at least for today. So my talk is evolutionary biology and intelligent design, wherever the evidence is leading. And I'm going to present really a key lecture, and I will not go into much scientific detail. Because I think that is, this afternoon we will have talks which would go into scientific detail, but I would rather introduce some ideas which I think are relevant for the Zentrum für Biokomplexität und Naturteleologie. I mean, we are at the beginning and we set the stage, and I think it's important that we set the stage properly. It may be that I will say a few things today which may be disturbing for one or the other participant at this meeting. But we will have the possibility to discuss, and I think that's important. So you already read what the structure of the lecture is. I start with the question, what is evolutionary biology? And short definition, evolutionary biology as a scientific endeavor seeks to explain the origin and variation of life, restricting itself to the analysis of natural causes and effects. So this is what we do in the natural sciences. There is a pre-assumption in our science, the pre-assumption of non-interventionalism. So that's how we work in my lab all day long, and it's pretty successful. Evolutionary biology has two branches. One branch is the empirical evolutionary biology. The other branch is the historical evolutionary biology. And in the empirical branch, we really use the empirical method, which means we use experiments. In the historical branch, we use an empirical historical method, which I will say a few things later. We have in the empirical branch experimental falsification of theories, and we have in the historical branch no such experimental falsifications. There may be contradictions or not, but we don't have the possibility to do experiment over the past millions and billions of years, of course. Now, as a whole, evolutionary biology is an empirical historical science. We cannot gain a full understanding of life without evolutionary biology. And in saying this, I say it very clear that evolutionary biology is a very important branch of biology. We need it, irrespective of our worldviews. And I think this is important to clearly state. Evolutionism, in contrast, is not a science, but it's a closed worldview, and that is completely different. We have three null hypotheses. I mean, we have many null hypotheses, but I think we have three main null hypotheses in evolutionary biology. The first one, null hypothesis, suggests that observed evolutionary processes can be explained by natural causes and effects. So in other words, microevolution can be explained by natural causes and effects. A second null hypothesis, and that is from historical evolutionary biology, it suggests that all organisms share a common ancestor. That's what you also could call macroevolution. And a third null hypothesis is that the origin of biocomplexity, macroevolution, can completely be explained by the physico-chemical laws of nature. I think these are three main null hypotheses of this field of science. And I would like to say that these null hypotheses are rational scientific starting points of evolutionary biology. This is not just some ideas some crazy people would have. It is a logical, it is a rational starting point of that science, irrespective of what later on the data would say or not. And I also would like to make this very clear. Empirical historical evidence may corroborate or contradict these null hypotheses. They must just be tested as it is usual in science. And while testing these hypotheses, evolutionary biology as a truly scientific enterprise will always follow the evidence wherever it may lead. I'm not sure whether you believe that sentence, but I think if it's a truly scientific enterprise, it will be the case. It must be the case. I will shortly go through these three null hypotheses in order later on to show what I think is the relation of those to intelligent design. Hypothesis number one, basically we have existing species and we observe in these existing species variants, and we know how such variants occur, mutation, recombination, hybridization, lateral gene transfer, maybe others, but these probably are the main we know up to date. And then the question is, how do these variants behave in population? So we have the genetic level and with the population genetic level, and that deals with the change of the frequency of these genetic variants in population. And there are various hypotheses and theories how this can happen. Of course, you know the Darwinian evolution, which is based on selection, and we have various types and various levels of selection. We have a neutral evolution according to Kimura, and we have an evolutionary mechanism which is genetic drift. We have now the extended theory of evolution, Ivo-Devo, phenotypical plasticity, epigenetics, niche construction, and so on. We have other processes which I have separated. I just, for instance, migration isolation, and these are more stochastic effects. And, well, I don't know what else exists in biology. Maybe much more. We just don't know. And all these processes result in speciation, in the formation of novel species or novel genera. The explanatory power of empirical evolutionary biology is extraordinary. And I state this boldly because if you're a biologist, if you're a geneticist, if you look at the data in detail, it's amazing that this theory really has an explanatory power. I mean, Darwin was an excellent scientist. He was a very intelligent man. And we know much more than Darwin did in his days. And it's really amazing. I like it. Still, we have many open questions. We have a lack of knowledge about the holobiology of existing organisms. A huge lack of knowledge, even about a single cell. We have a lack of knowledge about the genotype-phenotype relationship. And we need to know much more about that relationship in order to model evolutionary processes. We have a lack of knowledge on phenotype fitness relationships. We have exceedingly complex population genetics. If you take population genetics to the real world, to real populations, it's exceedingly complex. I mean, we will have a lecture from Ola Hösja, which will address this. And we have limited direct observation of speciation processes. Now, what about that hypothesis? I've chosen a balance in order to give you my personal opinion. Yes, we have a big lack of knowledge, and we don't know what's behind that, and we will discover this as far as it's possible. But we have also many, many positive data. So my feeling and my insight as a biologist is the answer is most probably yes. Most probably yes. We do not really know at the end of the day. I mean, this is science. You don't have the final truth. You just have to wait upon further research. Now, second, all organisms share a common ancestor. I will do this very, very shortly. That's not my field, but we interpret empirical, should we read empirical data, are interpreted within a historical perspective or hypothesis. And we use various empirical data, fossils, biostratigraphy. We heard about the gaps in the fossil record and many, many more. And we use, of course, comparative biology on its very, very many levels. We can look at convergences and many, many, many more. So what would the balance, in my gut feeling, say? We have problems. We have these fossil gaps. We have amazing convergences, and you have to ask where do they come from. but I think we have, from comparative biology and from biostratigraphy and more, we have also lots of positive evidence. And especially, I do not know an alternative hypothesis which would explain the biological data other than sharing a common ancestor. So I would say probably yes, probably. We need more research, as always. Now, the third hypothesis, inferred macroevolutionary transitions. I mean, what do I mean if I say these macroevolutionary transitions? We already heard about the origin of life, the molecular machines, the eukaryotic cell, the metazoa, the body plans, organs, classes, families, and so on and so on. So these are many transitions which must have taken place. And I would call those, in the first approach, these are macroevolutionary transitions. And throughout the history of life, we have the continuous de novo origin of genes, which is a problem in itself. And in my opinion, we know very little about these processes if we apply physicochemical laws of nature. We already heard that we have not much idea on how a first cell came into being, not even on the structural level of the formation of monomers and polymers, but much less so in the informational level where we have the molecular machines and the circuits in the cells, and we have lots of question marks here. I would say we know, in the sense of scientific knowing, we know next to nothing. That's just what I think it's the case here. Whether anybody will develop other theories, we'll see. That's fine. We have the de novo origin of genes. We will have a lecture from my own group this afternoon on this topic. We have the macromolecular, the biomolecular machines. In life, all life is made of biomolecular machines. This is an ATP synthase model, a very nice video actually from the Discovery Institute. I really like it. And I can show it without paying anybody else for showing it. That's good. Yeah. So this is one of these machines, and I don't like to go into any detail. We have many of these machines. I did lots of thinking and also publishing about the molecular machine of the bacterial flagellum, which is extraordinary, fascinating. Now, these are just videos from my lecture in general microbiology, where I introduce the people to these kinds of movements and machines. And you all know the discussion. Michael Behe started, and you know the basic argument. And I don't repeat that. But I think it's fair to say that these are not the only molecular machines we have. We have other molecular machines in biology. And we work in our group with the enterohemorrhagic Escherichia coli, which is a human pathogen, which is a pretty dangerous human pathogen. You have a certain chance to die if you're infected by this pathogen. And this pathogen has amazing mechanisms, amazing molecular machines. So here are some videos of one of these molecular machines, and what you can see here is a molecular syringe. That is an injection apparatus, and you can see here that's the bacterium, and that's the host cell, and now there is a protein delivered to the cytoplasmic membrane, and it makes a pore, and the bacterium, the pathogen, couples to that pore, and through that molecular syringe, lots of effector proteins, toxic proteins, are injected into the cell, and finally E. coli takes over the control over the human cells, and I call this kind of a molecular rape. Very well knowing that words like rape or words like good or words like bad do not belong to the words of empirical sciences. They are irrelevant. But these are amazing machines, and they just show you a very simplified structure of this molecular syringe. And I find myself, these are pictures from my lecture on the biology of human pathogens. And I find myself sometimes standing in front of my students explaining these machines and say, wow, This is amazing. This is ingenious. This is great. This is great. One other example before I proceed. Another pathogen, which is Streptococcus pyogenes, a special form of Streptococcus pyogenes. You know it all. You have all the infections in the throat from Streptococcus, but that's a special strain. And this special strain is also called a flesh-eating strain of this bacterium. And you could get an infection which, well, that looks pretty fine, will heal, but that can develop, that infection, and it's difficult to heal that infection. And I will show you now some pictures, and I tell my students in the lecture, don't look at it if you have, I don't know the English word, schwache Nerven. Oh, yeah. Weak stomach, don't look at those. So what's the end of that infection? And I show you a few pictures. What's the end of that infection? There's an arm of a patient, and this arm gets eaten up. And at the end of the day, you can just cut it in no other way and hope that you will rescue the patients. That's another patient, that's a child which is infected. And one man and his wife died from this disease. He wrote a booklet and he called it The Disease from Hell. And it's amazing how this microorganism does it. This is the virulence factor network of this necrotizing Streptococcus pyogenes. It's amazingly complex. Hi folks, this is intelligent design. Now, what do I think about the hypothesis? Can it be completely explained by the physical-chemical laws of nature? We have some empirical evolutionary biology, and I don't believe that it tells us much about this problem. And we have an unknown origin of novel biological function. We have an unknown origin of syn-organized biological machines, structures, organs, body plans. So I would say probably not. Probably we have to do research about that, and we'll see what we find. My conclusion is that empirical evidence leads me to the conclusion that evolutionary biology so far, and that's always what I have to add, so far failed to explain fundamental aspects of the origin of biocomplexity. How do we deal with such unsolved fundamental problems of evolutionary biology? First of all, we have to state that you do have these problems. There are fundamental problems, because in saying so, that's the only possibility to do research on it. So what we need is more data to solve these problems. And if we would like to have more data, we need more evolutionary research. We need much more evolutionary research, and we should put much more money into these fields in order to know more about what's going on. And I say this as a Christian, of course. So sometimes we can find a solution, and then the evolutionary theory, in the way I said it, is a satisfactory explanation. Sometimes we find no solution. If we have no solution, we go back into more research and with more and more and more, and we go through these cycles a long time. So biologists don't skip easily their task. And they know why. But sometimes we find that the problem gets worse and worse and worse. The more data we have, the worse gets the problem. And what do we make out of that? Well, I would state, yes, there are severe non-trivial problems. A non-trivial problem is a problem where I can see that it probably needs a completely new frame of thinking, new concepts, new ideas. And there is no solution so far. Why? Why is there no solution? And now you can answer these questions differently. And often it is answered in the realm of worldviews. One worldview is naturalistic evolutionism, also theistic evolutionism. To be clear, theistic evolutionism is not the same as theistic evolution. Two very different things, and you need to separate these.
Can you explain?
Pardon me?
Can you explain that?
Evolutionism is a worldview which has more or less ideological characteristics. Now, unsolved, what would you say? Or what I hear people saying, unsolved fundamental problems of evolutionary biology just do not exist. I mean, if you read all the discussions we have in the internet, few things we can't explain, that's fine, but fundamental problems, no, fundamental problems do not exist. Evolution will explain everything. Critical questions are anti-scientific. Wherever the evidence is leading, no, it's already decided where the evidence can potentially lead. Well, we have another worldview dominating science, that's young Earth creationism or old Earth creationism. And, well, there is no solution. That's what I hear. There is no solution. There will never, ever be any solution, period. It's proven that evolution is wrong. Stop futile evolutionary research. I have heard people saying this to me. Why do you spend millions of euros in evolutionary research? It's clear it's wrong. Don't waste the money of the taxpayers. I have heard people saying this to me. Well, wherever the evidence is leading, no. It's already clear what the evidence is allowed to say and not. You can third, stay within the non-interventionalist scientific frame of thinking. Ask this question and you can say, well, it's because we do not yet have enough empirical data. This is well possible. It is because we need novel empirical concepts. That is also an approach. So let's get back to the lab. We need more work to be done. And this is very respectable. Wherever the evidence is leading, yes, but the evidence can only take two different views. View number one, we have solved the problems within our framework of thinking. View number two, we don't. And that's it, without further putting in any worldview thinking. Of course, it is a possibility that this approach won't lead us to the truth, because it's also methodological constricted. And that's fine, but it needs to be said. That's the main point. Now we could also consider another frame of thinking. And yesterday we had a lecture from one of the most famous people in intelligent design. So intelligent design, that could be another frame of thinking. How do I personally see intelligent design? At this point in time, that may change, but at this point in time, if that ellipsis is the reality, the natural sciences, for instance, evolutionary biology, with their frame of thinking number A, non-interventionalistic, no causes beyond the laws of nature considered, that certainly describes very well and very successfully a certain part of reality. That is wonderful. I mean, I would do it all over the same. I'm not an old man now, but if I could start all over again, I would study biology and do the same. It's wonderful. But that's not all of reality. I believe there are metaphysical sciences, which are also sciences, but not empirical ones. And they have another frame of thinking. And non-interventionalistic frame of thinking, causes beyond the laws of nature are considered, may be possible, maybe exist. That is another frame of thinking. Of course, there are still other frame of thinkings. You could put in religion here, metaphysical experiences in faith, and you could many other parts of reality, which I'm so glad that we have at least 4 philosophers with us, because I believe that we cannot deal with that question without philosophy. We need philosophy, we need an exchange between the natural sciences and philosophy in order to go steps forward. I suggest, to answer that question, I suggest that intelligent design is not an alternative to evolutionary biology. Decidedly not. Intelligent design, in my opinion, is a metaphysical scientific research program which is not separated from, but includes all natural sciences. And that's what I show on this picture. Such a metaphysical scientific program includes natural sciences. It does not exclude it. It's not an alternative to it. I think this is a very important, for me, a very important thing. To make it more specific, evolutionary biology as an empirical historical science is therefore an integral part of the intelligent design approach. I could make that even stronger. I believe evolutionary biology is a vital part of intelligent design. You cannot do intelligent design properly without, at the same time, doing evolutionary biology properly. And this may be surprising for some of you, I don't know. Now, it's a very important question. When do we need to switch frames of thinking? When do we go from one realm to the other realm? A scientific approach requires a rational and convincing criteria for switching between frame A of thinking to frame B. You cannot do it just so. You have to present clear, rational criteria. What criteria could this be? I would like to suggest two criteria. Criterion one is frame A of thinking clearly and repeatedly failed so far to explain either the function or the origin of observed phenomena. Repeatedly and clearly. And then you may think of switching thinking frames because the answer may lie somewhere else. But we need to be cautious. That argument may become questionable if relevant novel data are discovered. So it's always so far we can say so. I would like to suggest criterion two. Observed phenomena show obvious properties which seem to fall outside frame A of thinking. I give you potential examples. Biomolecular machines with obvious parallels to engineered designs. Ingenious structures of nature which elicit a unique impression of marvel, surprise, and amazement, which is definitively beyond the scope of empiricism. Aesthetic characteristics of abiotic or biotic phenomena. And if you just look carefully what kind of words I use, and I use words such as machine, engineers, design, ingenious, marvel, amazement, surprise, aesthetic, no words which you would find in empirical sciences. No. These are all words which relate to the mind of people. It's interesting. It's very interesting. And again, we need philosophy at this point in order to clarify what kinds of words do we use and what kinds of concepts, of philosophical concepts, biophilosophical concepts do we have. And there are third, fundamental distinguishing properties of life. And in my mind, at the point where I am now, this is the most important point. And I do have many of questions concerning this point. So what is life? I mean, Schrödinger, with his famous book, What is Life? What is life? We still don't know exactly what life is. We can just discuss this. Life is amazing, but is it fundamentally different from inorganic structures? Is that really true? Life is synorganized. Life is, on a mysterious, almost mysterious way, autonomous. Life is characterized by a self-organizing metabolism. Life is living of a self. I do not even exactly know what a self is. I ask the philosophers to help me in defining these terms. Yeah? I know that I have a self, yes, hopefully. Life is biological information and transmission of biological information. I can talk now an hour about biological information. We do not really know what that is. We know what it isn't, but we don't know what it is. Life finally has a purpose and pursues goals. Life in all its different forms. You can start with bacteria, and that's, well, teleology. And it has a reason that we decided to take that in our new Zentrum. It's not only biocomplexity, it's more than that. And if you look, what words do I use? Organization, autonomy, self, information, purpose, goals. No scientific words, no empirical scientific words. I believe life is much, much more about what is life. And I think we have to work on that question quite some more. Is life fundamentally different from inorganic structures? If life were fundamentally different, it could not be reduced to matter. If that really were the case, it could not be reduced to matter. And then a complete study of life would require frames of thinking other than naturalism and methods in addition to those of the natural sciences. And I believe these methods need to be developed. If that were true for the study of life itself, it must also be true for the study of its origin. Now, Günther, you give me a sign. How many minutes do I have?
No.
Okay.
Let's go on. We take it from the discussion.
Well, I have a few final remarks. I'm done with my slides, but I want to say you have realized that I did not present complete concepts and no final solutions, and especially in biology we have uncountable open questions and severe lack of knowledge, despite an explosion of data in the last decades. I think these topics are important for further work, not only in our center, but also in biology and in philosophy in general. And I'm very happy that it was possible to gather quite a number of scientists at this meeting from diverse fields at our today. 30 people, that's not enough. We need many, many, many more. Problems are huge, which we have to research and to solve. If we aim for a scientific enterprise, and I think we should do so, then the future is open. We don't have all the answers at the beginning, and that's always the case in science, as it was with every single PhD project I have supervised over many years. I said at the beginning of this lecture, and I said it yesterday, that it's a hallmark of all natural sciences that they will follow the evidence wherever the evidence is leading. That is what I always teach my students, and that is also what I seek for me personally. I've been active in this field for more than 35 years. I've seen a lot. I've seen most influential people, excellent scientists, and for some reason they could not follow the evidence. There are reasons why you cannot follow the evidence. It's very important to talk about these reasons. Be it evolutionists or creationists or atheists or Muslims or Christians, sometimes I think, well, I think I feel tired. I feel tired if I look at the situation. And when I prepared that lecture, I thought maybe I feel tired because there have been times in my life where I was one of them. Over many years, I had to learn to be prepared to learn, to be ready to follow the evidence wherever it leads. I have experienced that evidence required me to entomb some of my most cherished hypotheses and even some of my most cherished beliefs. To be honest, to follow the evidence wherever it is leading is not always an easy task. And you know, as well as I do, that we scientists are temptable because we are human beings. Thank you for your attention.